0.5 has, in my opinion, been an excellent patch and a huge step forwards for Path of Exile 2, bringing it into comparable standing to PoE 1. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with the league and would like to take a few minutes to highlight what I've liked and believe GGG should lean into, and what I personally believe should be modified in some way. So for the things to lean into, the first of course would be Atlas progression. The initial endgame process of acquiring your first chunk of Atlas points, delving into league mechanics, exploring and completing your Atlas before your first major farming strategy is genuinely excellent. In fact, I enjoy it more than PoE 1's system at the moment. There is a ton of things to do and you're also never too far away from finding something that you need. A biome, a deadly map boss, unique maps, etc. I think the central castle, to call it that, helps a bit to fill out a lot of the empty space and gives a large periphery from which to discover content. I also genuinely enjoyed the character progression post-campaign. At least with Monk, who I'd argue has quite an ethical progression curve, the level of difficulty felt just appropriate enough where I'd actually have to focus and actually tackle the mechanics of both the Arbiter fights, but could one-hit them from day 2, day 3 onwards. Arbiter of Divinity was great. He felt like a sort of Dark Souls boss, which is obviously a big inspiration for PoE 2 in general. I think this is the first time PoE 2 has had a proper farming strategy beyond just doing the content. Tablets, biomes, Atlas Masters all converged to provide a large impact on any league mechanic and offered a lot of customizations. You had Abyss chests, Abyss rares, pits with Abyss, raw currency farming, breach currency, breach trees, ritual omens, expedition and base maps, logbooks, sagas, Alder's saga, temple, which I didn't touch, delirium, which you could layer onto whatever you wanted pretty much, and you could also just do tablet farming. You also have complementary league mechanics like exiles, boxes, wisps, all of which had some significant use this patch. I also like the fact that you have to tailor your strategy a little bit to suit your own Atlas, and you could make it even better by finding some kind of travel map strategy. Both Jado and Doriani were great for this. Moreover, farming strategies have been discovered daily, and this is genuinely unprecedented in PoE 2. And now I'm a big believer in the Infinite Atlas. Farming a Mageblood for a ritual was genuinely one of the most fun farms I've done in Path of Exile as a franchise. Especially with the Wisp minigame where you'd gain more tribute by killing monsters inside the radius. It had a short timer where you can't really dodge roll into it and still kill monsters because it would kind of switch around. So you had this sort of minigame where you want to maximize uptime inside the circle to get tribute, because balancing your tribute when you're doing a ritual strategy is actually quite difficult when you have 40 rerolls. I enjoyed it a lot. Overall, I would say it's been a huge step in the right direction. The second point I believe GGG should lean into more is the audio-visual design. The audio-visual design in Path of Exile 2, at least as it relates to skills, is the best I've seen in any RPG. There's a satisfying weight and impact to so many abilities that it really kind of fits the theme of the game as like this kind of like gritty, semi-realistic, heavy impact, dark RPG basically. When I played Explosive Concoction, I could distinctly hear the sound of a thick, nail palm-filled vial of liquid immolation that was made by some mad apothecary. At least that's the evocative image that appears in my mind. I also like Trample Toe. Trample Toe is similar. It's a shame that it kind of wrecks my CPU. There are some freeze abilities as well, which have this kind of satisfying, shattering sound to them. Very, very good. Love it. The next thing to talk about will be ground loot crafting. I do actually believe that GGG has managed to solve ground loot and, to some extent, crafting of ground loot. No more essence spam or reforging for tier 1 fizz at the harvest bench and then fracturing from a white base, a process which negates the vast majority of dropped gear in PoE 1 after day 1. There's something very cool about finding a good rare base that just needs a desecration, or even better, finding a blue item with a T1 mod and or an open suffix. I do think this creates a bit of a larger gap between those that kind of know how to craft and those that don't in terms of like market performance. However, you kind of need to know a bit about crafting in PoE 2. It's sort of unavoidable. You're leaving so much money on the table if you don't know how to craft some of the gear that you find. I would heavily encourage people to learn how to do that. As much as I love PoE 1 crafting, I did not enjoy blowing up 11 helical rings last season whilst rolling them with the crit multi-essence. And there's also negative rarity farming for top tier bases, which to me at least is an entirely novel concept. The next thing I'd like to talk about is combo design, specifically as it relates to monk and quarterstaffs. I think quarterstaff skills are an excellent example of a success within GGG's combo-based doctrine. You can clear all content by just spamming ice strikes, but to really get the maximum benefit early, you'll want to add in Freezing Mark, maybe Ice Bite, Mantra of Destruction, if you're using Falling Thunder or Flicker Strike, and probably some kind of power charge scaling also helps with those abilities. You're rewarded for pressing buttons, but not prohibitively punished for not doing so, with your final reward being the ability to clear multiple screens with a single Flicker Strike. In my opinion, combo-based skills should always be opt-in. For example, if you have to do full combos to achieve, let's say, 1.0 ratio of effectiveness, that doesn't feel good. You want to get like 1.4 level, let's say a 1.4 multiplier to your character effectiveness by doing a combo, and maybe like 0.8, 0.9 if you don't. That's the Ice Strike comparison here, by the way. You should always incentivize people to opt into combos and not punish them for not doing it. And the final thing I'd like GGG to lean into a bit more, which I'm sure is coming very quickly, would just be some level of aspirational content. We have obviously all the new Atlas mechanics. They're all very good. They can get a little bit difficult at times with delirium scaling, but I think we would like to see something where we can truly scale things like Map Effect, maybe something like Delve and Infinite Scaler, or even Valdo's maps. Some way of adding prohibitively silly levels of juicing for the no lives so that we can just continue playing the game for the next few months, basically. That'd be nice. Maybe not Valdo's, that might be a bit too much too early. But let's see. And of course, there are a few things that I believe we should all collectively inform GGG that they may want to move away from these things, at least in my opinion. Just my opinion. First would be bugs, but I'm actually not going to talk about that because it's so immediately obvious to GGG and it's not worth talking about. But yes, there are many, many bugs. Collision. I think collision between the player and enemies, small objects, and even other players should be reduced or removed. Getting dragged by a boss into its attack is the most infuriating thing in the world. Being blocked by those falling skeleton giants and being multi-hits, sometimes with no way of avoiding it, is just not fun in my opinion. Yes, I know there are ways to solve it, but it just shouldn't be in the game, is what I would say. If collision must be in the game, at least give us a long cooldown instant movement skill. Not blink. A real movement skill. The next is, in my opinion, animation lockouts. It seems that GGG is insistent on making sure that every beautifully crafted animation is played to its fullest, unless it's one of those that's cancelable by dodge roll. Stopping sprinting has a slowdown animation. Sprinting and attacking enemies has this kind of weird name lock thing going on. Khan did a video on this where he explains it better than I could. Blink has an animation at the end that it kind of feels like your character is stepping off a bus. You know, you're being shot out of a cannon in a straight line and then you're getting off a bus. That's kind of what Blink feels like to me at the moment, and you have to use Spirit for it. Things like Hand of Chayula, which are technically a movement skill, I'd prefer if they had some kind of phasing so they targeted whatever mob you were looking at, but you know, they don't have to do that, of course. However, what I find is even with very high attack speed, I can't really make that feel as nice as I would like it to. It's definitely my slowest ability. It's got this weird kind of wind-up animation where I just feel like that can be removed. Just make it faster, please. Just make it more fun to play, I would argue. The next would be enemy movement skills. Now, I don't think as players we'd need to have the leap slam across 2 screens for 200 hours like you'll see if you watch a day 1 POV for a PoE 1 league start. I don't think we need that. We don't need the stupid leap slamming with an axe across the screen, okay? But can we just have at least one instant movement skill, even if it has a 15-second cooldown, and even if you can't reduce that no matter what. This would just work wonders in those situations where you can't escape from an enemy that, by the way, has access to movement skills. Like those harvester enemies that can have a temp bubble mod, and just jump on you and prevent you from rolling away, basically, while they have lightning raining down. I mean, there's ways around it. It's not so much of a big deal in the late game, but it just doesn't need to exist, really, does it? It's just kind of annoying. An instant blink would solve all of this, in my opinion. And no, not blink, as mentioned. And finally would be the UI UX design, this is a relatively minor concern of mine, but there are myriad small inconveniences with the UI and UX, which include, but aren't limited to, buffs being blocked by enemy life bars, the Atlas master interface. I think it's not obvious at all that you can select multiple sort of nodes from the same row. Like they're designed in rows, so this just doesn't look intuitive when you only have 4 points. Things like the currency exchange, it doesn't immediately open to the type window and you can't immediately type when you open it, despite the fact that this was fixed in PoE 1 last patch. You know, this was made here first. There's also the fact that the defer button in Ritual is overlaid over the offering to the offering tribute to the King in the Mist, which is this doesn't need to exist, and also it's a massive troll to PoE 1 players. There's also not really an obvious indication as to what Delirium Fog really does. I know you can find this out, but you know, we had quite a few, let's say, in day 1, day 2 progression, it wasn't immediately obvious what the bar and the shards actually do. You can obviously work this out, but again, stuff like this should be a bit obvious. And that is that. Overall, very, very, very impressed with this patch. I'm very much looking forward to 1.0. Bye bye.